Skins, the first season, came out all the way back in 2007, and society was a lot different back then. Skins is a British teen drama starring a group of friends and details how they tackle their own individual problems as well as how they interact amongst a group. It was a show that commented on a wide array of social issues such as drug abuse, sexuality, and mental illness, and generally what it meant to be an adult. Each of these unique characters find their own way in the world, their own sense of meaning. They all had different conceptions of that. As most people know, there's countless research to suggest that the way our parents treat us as a child implies how we might act as an adult, and what we can expect from future relationships. One of the most prolific and mainstream ideas comes from Bandura, and in Bandura's social learning theory, we learned that children will imitate the actions of a role model in front of them, and this gives credence to the idea that all of our deep-rooted behaviors and actions are all rooted in childhood. Of course, there's a lot more to the story, so assuming that our parents will act as our main primary caregivers and role models, we rely a lot on them for our perceptions of what the future will be like, and if those same parents have all these unresolved issues, they can come across as pretty dysfunctional. In the series of Skins, this is an extremely common theme. Each cast has their main teenager group and additional older cast, usually consisting of parents or teachers. With both these groups present on screen, it makes it a bit easier to compare their behaviors. Being teens, you'd expect them to have their own set of issues, and they would seem relatively simple compared to their adult counterparts. But in Skins, this isn't the case. Actually, the adults are just as immature as the teens, and their problems are quite similar actually. For example, we have characters like Angie, the psychology teacher, who in the first series would openly air their emotional laundry in front of the children. Not to mention sleeping with one of them. Oh yeah, Chris, go on, mate. We also have someone like Tony's father, who is pretty unhinged and swears his head off in frustration constantly at being mugged off by his own son, showing his inability to control his emotions and as a result come across as pretty mental, and generally lacking decorum in handling his son. These are just a few examples, but many of the adult characters in Skins are unhinged in some type of way. They struggle to tame their emotions and parallel what the children do. And I believe that this is something that Skins executes incredibly. So much so that I'm making this video about it. And in this video, we'll focus on the dynamics to investigate what Skins is trying to say about the relationship between children and their parents. Also, a little disclaimer, I'm only going to talk about generations 1 and 2, simply because I have seen the third gen, I just thought it was shit. We'll start this video with more clear and obvious parallels. By obvious, I mean parallels that the show makes the audience explicitly aware of. Sid is one of the most popular characters in the first generation, mainly because he is the most normal and relatable of all the male characters. We all wanted to be like Tony growing up. We all knew we were secretly Sid. But did you realize Sid felt that way too? Throughout the first season, we can see how Sid's father, Mark, treats him and continually compares him to Tony.
Did Tony feel this? No. No, of course not. And why? Why didn't he feel it?
He doesn't do history.
Right!
Sid's grades, attitude, and general dating success are poor. Mark sees this and torments Sid for it. However, we learn in the second season, after meeting Mark's father and brother, that Mark too is viewed as the family disappointment. In Sid's episode, Mark's father shows clear favoritism to his brother, even so far as to give him the family business as inheritance. They're also shown as close, with Mark acting as the family outcast. Contextually, this wasn't so different to the way that Mark compared his son Sid to his best friend Tony, the relationship of inferiority being mirrored.
What? Why could you not be like? Why did I?
Mark later does become aware of this by acknowledging he was proud of Sid and that he loves him.
My father's disappointed. They often are.
Is that how you see me?
Thus ending the cycle, but dies tragically the same night. Maybe too little, too late. With the second generation came the monodizygotic twins being Katie and Emily, with each being different from one another in a wide manner of ways. This meant that Katie's behavior seemed to align more with her mother's. Katie's mother is depicted as a headstrong, confident and stubborn woman, so much so that she drove wedges between her daughter Emily for her homosexuality and her husband for his poor financial decisions. In a way, she became the villain of the family for a brief while. There was a period in the show where Katie expressed the same views as her mother regarding her sister's supposed gay identity. It caused a rift between the twins and even led to violence in the climax of their conflict. Violence which Katie would finally end with her iconic moment. This one seems more coincidental given the fact that both Freddy and his father were in relationships with women who had severe mental issues, with Freddy's mother deleting herself and Freddy's father blaming himself for the outcome. For a lot of the series, Freddy blames his father for his mother's death and resents him for it.
If your mum could see this.
Well, she can't, can she, thanks to you?
Only after Effie, Freddy's girlfriend, attempts to do the same as his mother did, Freddy truly begins to grasp how difficult it is to save someone in this world. Trying to save someone and stopping them from harming themselves is something that you inherit, or just the goodness of human nature shining through. Ironically, it's Freddy who meets his fate early, so we couldn't see his life after that cycle might have ended. James Cook is one of the main characters and frontrunners of the second generation. I say this despite it not being explicitly stated because of how much development he gets. Unlike most of the Skins cast, Cook gets one-to-one time with each of his parents. Here we can get a peek into how Cook turned out to be the brash, violent but loyal person that he is, starting with Cook's father, Superhands.
The secret ingredient is crime.
He is seen to be a lazy, middle-aged man who is only interested in drugs, sex and himself. Very similar to Superhands actually.
Maracas.
He is depicted as being someone that only looks out for his own needs and won't hesitate to use or cut people off, even his own son. Cook also was happy to use people to get what he wanted and self-destruct through poor life habits. The difference being, Cook was fiercely loyal to his friends because they're all he has. Their relationship climaxed after Cook pushed his father off the boat and symbolically correcting his father to say that he is the one and only Cook.
Watch out! Watch out!
This signified Cook surpassing his father and claiming to the world and himself that he doesn't need a poor excuse of a father to be whole. With Cook's mother, it's clear that she gave up on him at an early age due to his tendencies, which were probably adopted from his father. This meant that his poor behavior was never corrected and improved upon, and his mother dooming him as a failed child. We can see this when all her pent-up anger erupts after Cook mistakenly ruined her project. She also expresses herself through her sexuality, an expression which Cook uses to get close to women to satisfy his need for intimacy.
I needed to get laid, man. You're always fucking trying to get laid.
Cook was raised with selfish and neglectful parents. It's no wonder he got into a lot of trouble socially and legally. The difference being that he became aware of these tendencies and began taking responsibility for them. This one is difficult to gauge due to how absent his father was, but Chris from the first generation had a similar vibe about him like Cook. Chris was kinder and more gentle though, destructive but mainly to himself. Chris had a lot of trouble staying out of it. His grades were poor and eventually he got kicked out. Later in the series, Zhao is pregnant and Chris wasn't sure if he'd be any good at it, a sentiment which was eerily made by Chris's father at his grave. Were Chris's actions a result of his genes or due to the fact that he'd been abandoned by both his parents? Regardless, not having his parents there definitely didn't help. JJ is one of the most innocent and wholesome characters of the show, and his relationship with his parents reflects this. For most of the series, we see how active and a little bit overprotective JJ's mum is of him. Of course, he is autistic, so he does need some extra help managing social environments. However, JJ finds this a bit too intrusive and it affects his relationship with his new girlfriend, Lara.
JJ hasn't told you about himself.
You can't go in the bathroom. What don't you understand about that?
From this point, JJ's father finally steps in and we see his face for the first time. He has a conversation with his son and shares an anecdote of JJ's childhood with him. Essentially, he tells him that he believes in him and no matter what situation he is in, he'll always find a way through, in his own unique JJ way. The reason why his father was so passive was because he didn't want to add to the coddling his wife did. His approach was to be there from a distance and step in when he needed to. When JJ's friends were fighting over Effie, he would always try his own methods to solve the problem. Some failed, but eventually he figured out how to settle it. Now here we'll look into the relationship parallels that are less obvious and the ones that the show doesn't make us explicitly aware of. Growing up, I think we all knew a mum like Pandora's, the type of mum that is sensitive to anything that involves risk, the type who thinks crap is a swear word.
Oh, sorry. What did I say? Oh, crap. Is crap a swear word? Crap.
From when we were introduced to Pandora in Generation 1 through Seasons 3 and 4, we hear about how she speaks with her mum on the phone. Being with Effie, a girl who is used to casual drug use and sex, Pandora constantly lies on the phone about what she is actually doing. When we eventually meet her mum, she's exactly as you would expect. She explicitly bans boys from her home and, of course, alcohol is a no-no. Essentially, her mum tries to coddle her way too much. While she is spiked on MD, Cook and Effie discover that she has a secret behind her wardrobe, a secret sex dungeon. What does that say about her? It shows that she herself has already been corrupted by this world and is trying to separate it from her daughter. The thing is, she's already been corrupted and the way that she is with her daughter only causes her to lie more and more, creating a bigger distance between them. If she were more transparent with her daughter, maybe her going off the rails and being so vulnerable might have been avoided. Maxie's story tackles his desire to go down the unconventional path and deviate from his father's expectations of him. Of course, Maxie wanted to be a dancer, whereas his father wanted him to be a builder, something clearly not suited well to him.
It's not my fault, is it? What? You're stuck in a fucking white van all your life!
The main reason was that he didn't want them to be apart, this is stated, but his father did mention that he was also talented in the arts, so we can imply that he didn't want Maxie to go for the dancing career in order to avoid the disappointment of failure, a failure which he perhaps experienced. I think we all know a person who can't ever be single, the type of person that always has to be in a relationship all of the time, even when it's not necessarily best for them or they're with the best person for them. Michelle's mother is seen through the show to be with multiple men and had been married over 5 times. I don't remember exactly. From the on-screen relationships that we do see, there's always some caveat. One was in his 20s, trying and failing at business ventures.
They've sent me too many fucking bongo dongo dogs.
The other was quite rich, but clearly a bit too close with his daughter. Despite a lot of failures, she continued to jump between relationships. The same could be said about her daughter, Michelle. She was never single. She went from Tony to Josh to Sid to Tony again. Despite her being aware of Tony's cheating and manipulative ways, she stayed with him for so long just to break up with him. Both her and her mother have this in common. It seems with time and experience, her mother just grew to accept this as part of herself. As the series unfolds, we get a deeper understanding of the character of Effie. We learn that she is deeply depressed and the reason for her bravado and femme fatale attitude is because she won't allow herself to be vulnerable and risk getting hurt. After she opens up herself to Freddy, she is aware of the incoming dread but becomes very needing of his attention very fast. This is so extreme to the point that after being left alone for just 1 day, her mental health collapses. However, did you remember the same thing happening with her mother? In the first generation, Effie's father goes on a business trip trip for a little while, and her mother becomes an alcoholic and severely depressed, not even getting out of bed. Perhaps these feelings were a result of some generational cycle of neglect or even some genetic illness. Of course, as with anything, it's not apparent everywhere in Skins. There are cases of characters who act in the opposite way or are just completely different. Tony is a complete outlier, a manipulative, cunning, and selfish character who is a very unique person compared to the others. Tony thinks many steps ahead and uses people as pawns in his games. His parents seem a lot more emotionally reactive, but more importantly, much less malicious. Jal is generally more tolerant and accepting of other people, including types like Chris. This is vastly different to her father, who has very strict expectations of his children, which means being very judgmental towards anyone who doesn't fit that mold. Anwar is another clear example who breaks almost every rule of being a Muslim just to enjoy his youth. Even Cook, despite his similarities with his parents, at least tries to turn a new leaf and mess up his life just that bit less. Skins as a whole is a great series and really entertaining, even though the characters are realistic, but the situations that they get themselves in aren't particularly so. Skins does a great job at providing a subtle but obvious context. In my opinion, Skins' character portrayals tell us a lot about how we can be like our parents without even us noticing that's happening. It's also a message of hope, because even if we feel like we're doomed by our genes to be destined to be like our parents, with enough self-awareness we can bring enough light to it and hope to break that cycle. Wow. Okay, wow. I really liked being able to analyze one of my favorite series of all time. I know it's not anime or anything like that, and obviously still going to be doing that. I'll always be doing that. But I thought it'd be nice to spread my wings a little bit, try my hand at something else. Just tell me what you think. If you enjoyed the analysis, if it made you want to watch it, if you haven't watched it already, let me know what you think. I've been SirLantz, and have a great day.